I'm pleased to be joined this afternoon by Chris Stewart. He is the CEO of Bright Beam, and you can find him on Twitter at Citizen Stewart. Chris, how are you? Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm doing well, man. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, the pleasure's ours. Could you tell us a little bit about your work at Bright Beam?
So at Brightbeam, we characterize our work as shining a light on the least of these, the children in cities that are prosperous, that have booming economies, but for some reason they have faces at the bottom of the well that aren't, their issues are not being taken care of by municipal leaders. We actually work to put those municipal leaders on the hook for the child outcomes in their cities.
Mm. Could you expound on that? Because it sounds like very important work. Could you give us some examples of your work in action?
Well, let me just say this where it started. So for at least 5 years, I've been traveling a lot, talking to parents and students and educators about what they want in their schools and about education. But something on the side started happening when I was going from city to city. I was going from Seattle to San Francisco to I live here in the Twin Cities, and I saw a pattern. And the pattern was this: in all these places where I was, there were cranes and there were condos and there were coffee shops and there were yoga studios going up. And in each one of those places, there were these booming economies, but there were people that were being marginalized. There were kids that we were talking to who we were reasonably assured would never live the lifestyle of the cities that they were growing up in. They could see it, they could touch it, they could smell it. It was right there. But when you would ask a mayor, city council members, others, like, does it ever bother you that you have kids in your own city who will never live the San Francisco lifestyle, will never live the Seattle lifestyle? The answers were always pretty vague, pretty essentialist, and nobody wanted to take credit for it. So we did a report over a year ago to try and put them on the hook, to just show them, put a mirror up to all these very progressive cities with all this money, these booming economies, and kids at the bottom of the well. And that report was called Shame of Progressive Cities. It was really meant to start the activism around, we are going to come for you. We are going to put you on the hook. You should not be able to run for mayor and wash your hands of what the black kids in your city, what type of opportunities they have. Like, whether they're going to, San Francisco Public Schools is a great example. Wealthiest county in California. God might say that they're wealthiest on the planet Earth in some ways. Only 7% black kids in their school district in the first place, and they have the worst outcomes with black students in the state of California. And that just didn't make any sense for us. Like, we're like, that don't make sense. You have money. You have all these condos.
I'm actually taken aback by that because we see this all over the country. What I'm afraid to ask, what do they credit the disparity to? Because, historically they would credit it to some type of inherent moral failing. But obviously that's not the case. So how did that unpack and unfold?
When it comes to black and brown students, what I call educational essentialism is pretty resolute. There are people who honestly believe that by your melanin content and your economic status, that you're born to fail. Like that, so a lot of it is, the talk is around, it's just poverty. It's not, anything more than that. But you can show them, like, you have more money than a lot of other places in this country. You have resources. Show me your budget and I'll tell you what you care about.
Yeah.
Show me the budget of San Francisco as a city or their school district, and I'll tell you what they care about. In a lot of cases, especially before the pandemic, I would have said to you, our black kids and our brown kids are going to schools where they have fewer resources, more needs, lowered expectations, schools that often put the least prepared teachers in front of the kids that need the best teachers, schools that punish them more harshly, see them as older. This is what research tells us. They see black kids as older than they are. They adultify them. They punish them more harshly. I know you know all this already, but when you start putting it all together, you're like, well, damn, this is rigged.
Yeah.
This is actually rigged, right?
And yeah, no, it's just bringing back a lot of memories of how I almost didn't make it out of the school system for some of the same exact reasons that you're outlining. So it is kind of jarring to just hear it from the research side, especially because so many of us have experienced it experientially. My question is how are they responding to your efforts? Because obviously what you're doing is significant, it's important, but it's shining in an uncomfortable light onto these cities. So I'm sure like it hasn't all been a positive reaction, but what type of reactions have you been seeing to your work?
No, what's interesting is we have activists in all the cities that we work in. We work across issues. So we work across issues of criminal justice and other issues that are important and germane to the families that we care about. And in all of those cases, like the police respond to you one way, the school district respond, any of the institutions respond very defensively.
Mm,
They all have very good reasons for why things are the way they are. What we have learned and what we understand is that the activism has to be ceaseless. You just have to stay on top of them. People can't run for office without having to answer tough questions about the children and the families in their cities,
mm,
especially those that are being left behind. I just want to say, a year ago, I would have said all this to you about the situation that we're in. A year later, what I want to say is this past year has been disastrous for Black
mm,
education. Our people are falling behind in ways that are just so critical. We're taking a data vacation. We don't have good numbers, and we want something big out of this new administration to pay us back for the problems that we're having in education.
mm. What type of ask are you asking of the current administration on those specific issues?
Yeah, and I should, qualify this by saying we're going to ask and we're going to demand, but we're not, 100% sure we're going to get everything. But
Absolutely.
listen,
Yeah.
at the federal level, we want internet for all. We want internet should not be a luxury, right? We have 16 to 17 million children that still live in households without access to broadband, high-speed broadband. We have 7 million kids that don't have the adequate devices that they need to do this disaster that we call remote learning right now. We want a big Marshall Plan type of movement out of this administration, no small tweaks. We also want them to rebuild the Office of Civil Rights. This
Mm,
last administration, the Office of Civil Rights in the U.S. Department of Education has been gutted, and it's almost useless at this point. We need them to rebuild it and make sure that we get good information and data out of that office. We also want to end to the surveillance practices that are embedded in education that people aren't paying attention to, that infringe on the dignity of our students. We are surveilling students. I'll give you one example. There's a district I can point you to where they actually share the student data with the sheriff's department. And the sheriff's department runs a prediction of whose schools records are going to lead to criminals. And they act on that. So they have a list of kids that have never committed a crime, but they are predicting are going to be criminals based on the information that's being shared with them quietly from the school district. We want a national end to anything like that. We also want SROs, officers. The money that we spend on policing kids, we want redirected into
mm,
things that help kids not have problems in the first place. The last thing I'll share, because we have a list of demands, we want some real power sharing. We want Title One. It's great to put money into Title One. We want Title One parents to have some real power at the highest of levels. We want them to be heard and seen in all the processes that go into policy making.
mm. So a lot of what you're asking is nothing short of revolutionary, not because of what you're asking, but because of how intransigent the system is. I love how you put it that none of this is going to happen without relentless activism. Tell everyone how they, because I'm going to sign up too, because this is really a difficult topic for me. How can everyone else join in and help this effort?
So you can join us by finding us at brightbeamnetwork.org, or you can go to voice2action.org, which is our platform where you can actually sign petitions. Right now, we have one that is aimed at the Biden administration to ask for a list of things, some of which I mentioned here today. If you go to voice2action.org, you can find us there.
And what are some of the next immediate events that you all are having, that your organization, like, what's the thing that we can look out for to participate in coming up soon?
So one of the things, honestly, we do a lot of work at the grassroots level. So each cities are different. We are working with activists nationally to come up with more of a national plan for the big ask. Right now, we want to make a bigger ask than even the things I said to you right now. But please, please, people, when you speak to mayors and city council members and school board members and congressmen, make sure that they are on the hook for answering to you about how the children and the families are doing in their cities, and that they can't wash their hands in these very prosperous cities of families that are hurting, really hurting economically and need some relief. We need to get some funds and some resources into hands of families and for students.
Chris Stewart, CEO of Bright Beam, shining a light on the reality around the country that in some of the most prosperous cities, we still have the best of times and the worst of times. Can you tell everyone how they can get up with you and follow you?
You can find me on Twitter at Citizen Stewart.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your work and your time, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.